So he's asked to expedite. So that's another little factor in this whole thing.
For 446 Boston Tower traffic, 2 mile final cross, runway 4 left. Hold short, runway 15 right.
Cross for left, short 15 right on November, triple 446.
Spitzers 801, turn left November 1, join November, hold short of runway 15 left.
Alright, November 1, November, short of 15 left, 804.
American 349, thank you. You can hold short of 4 right and want us to the tower now, frequency 132.22, he should be able to get you right out.
32.2, and hold short of 4 right.
30.
Okay, he missed the frequency, 3222. Apparently he doesn't fly in and out of Boston that often. We all know that frequency, one of the tower frequencies. But you can tell that they're being asked to expedite the process of taxiing out to the runway. Things are busy. It's only a two-pilot airplane, two-pilot cockpit, which means that only 2 pilots have to do all the duties that what we used to do with 3 pilot crews, like the 727 and the L-1011. So, like, call to the back and let the flight attendants know that we're getting ready for takeoff and to be seated. Checklists are being run. You're being rushed. So, again, this is all part of the setup here. So he is told to switch to tower frequency.
222.
22, got it, thank you.
Triple 446, contact ground point 9.
See you, triple 446.
That's what just landed.
349 bus, sir, hold short of runway 4 right, are you ready to go right out?
Hold short of 4 right, we'll be ready in about 1 minute.
Okay, so again, they're rushing him. Okay, you about ready to go? We got an airplane on final for the runway that you want to use for takeoff. So are you ready? Are you ready? Come on. Are you ready?
349.
American 349, roger, stop.
Go around, Delta 1386, go around runway 4 right.
Delta 1386 on the go.
Okay, there's the go around.
Affirmative, cross runway 15 left, hold short runway 15 right.
That's somebody else.
Cross 15 left, hold short of 15 right, it's just 804.
6 maintain 3000, fly runway heading.
3000, runway heading to 1386.
American 349, make a 180 and hold short of runway 4 right.
Make a 180, hold short of 4 right, American 349.
Okay, so I was just curious. I didn't have, since we have the Jeppesen charts and airport diagrams and that kind of thing now in the airplane. We don't carry them with us, so I couldn't open up my flight kit and pull up the airport diagram for Boston. So I went online and went to airnav.com and pulled up the diagram. I'll try to remember to put that link in the show notes as well. And looked at the airport diagram to see the layout and how American 349 would have gone to 4 right via runway 14. And just looking at the diagram, it wasn't clear to me if there were markings or anything to delineate where they would have to hold short of 4 right. And so I went to good old Google Maps and pulled up the satellite imagery from the Boston Logan Airport. And I looked at the paintings or the paint markings on the runway. And that little runway 14, right before the where the approach portion of 4 right crosses that little runway, there is a solid yellow line and then a broken yellow line on the other side of that. And that means that, if you're on the side that has the solid line, that means you cannot cross it unless you're given permission to do that. But it's right in the middle of the runway. It's not very obvious to me, at least looking at this aerial view, that this is where you're going to hold short. Again, remember, these guys were being asked to expedite their taxi. Hey, are you ready to go? We need to get you right out. And he asks if they're ready, and he said, no, we need about a minute. They're still probably waiting for the flight attendants to call them and say that the cabin is prepared for takeoff. And the captain may have been looking down. He may have been, who knows, didn't see the hold short markings. Again, to me, looking at it, doesn't look very clear. And he crossed over it. Now, was it like a devastating thing? I mean, were lives really at risk here? No, probably not, because the point at which the Delta flight would have been landing is quite a ways down that runway. The part where the American 349 transgressed was actually part of the approach zone, and so it wasn't really super close call there. yes, it was a violation of the protection of the runway, but and of course they did make a mistake by not stopping in time. But was it like one of those things where, lives were at risk and could have been a disaster? In my opinion, no. So anyway, they continue to cross over the approach zone for runway 4 right and do a 180 turn, which was probably a pretty tight turn because, again, it's only a 100-foot wide runway there. And then they were told to hold short 4 right on the other side. And eventually they got clearance to take off. They went on their way and were asked to write down a telephone number, the dreaded American 349. Please write down this telephone number and call when you get to your destination. And the Delta Flight 1386 that was sent around got to go around the pattern and log some more flying time and landed safely and uneventfully. So good job by the controllers at Boston Logan. Good heads up controlling on that one. And thank you, Chris in Boston, for sending me the link to that event. And if anybody has any questions about anything I just talked about as far as taxiway, runway intrusions, runway excursions, that kind of thing, send it in. You know how to do that. Feedback at airlinepilotguy.com. You can go to the website airlinepilotguy.com and look for that tab on the right side and click it. It says send voicemail, and you can record some voicemail, and that gets sent to me automatically, just like Carl Stebbings did. Carl Stebbings. Here, let's see. Let's listen to his voicemail that he left using SpeakPipe.
Hi, Pilot Jeff. It's Carl Stebbings here in the east of England, in the small village of Ersham.
Hi, Carl.
Just thought I'd drop you a line using the fantastic technology that is SneakPipe via your website. I hope you're well and enjoying life across the pond, as they say. I thought I'd drop you a line to say thanks for making a fantastic podcast, which I truly enjoy listening to and listening to most weeks. And as soon as you upload one, I download it. Just a question for you, Pilot Jeff. I remember in previous shows, I think you said you used to fly the Lockheed L1011 TriStar, which is one of my most favourite aircraft to fly on. Very fond memories of flying on the TriStar with British Caledonian many years ago as a child. And I remember you saying that you used to pilot one, or first officer TriStar. Just wondered if you could give us some more info on the experiences you had with the TriStar and what you thought of the aircraft itself. Well, as I sit here speaking to you, the weather here in the UK is, as always, dull and overcast. I expect it's much warmer where you are, but still good for flying, and I'm hoping to get some lessons in later on in the summertime, hopefully at our local club, which is the airfield at Seething. If you Google Seething, it's Seething, you can look at the website for the airfield there with info and stuff on the airfield. It's a privately run airfield, and I've flown from there a few times myself. It's a great airfield to fly from. So, Pilot Jeff, it's been good to speak, and hope you're well. Continue making the fantastic podcast that you do, and hope to speak to you again, or maybe drop you a line in the future. Thanks, Pilot Jeff, and as always, blue skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds, and happy flying. Thanks, Pilot Jeff. Bye.
Thank you, Carl, for using SpeakPipe. And isn't it great to be able to hear people's voices? Especially Carl's great accent. I love that British accent. Seething. Never heard of it, except that, is that where we get the term seething mad? The pilots that fly out of Seething are just crazy mad. No, I'm just kidding. I'll look that up. And regarding the weather, here in Buffalo, it starts with a B. Nice day today. Clear skies. I'm looking out the window here in my room, and I don't see a cloud in the sky. and the temperature is like right around 70 degrees. Beautiful day here. I did notice I was watching something, I think the Jubilee for Queen Elizabeth, and we had several of our news media outlets over there covering that. And boy, everybody was wrapped up in coats, and it looked windy and looked just miserable over there in London. Is that typical weather for you in the summertime? That would be unusual here. Most everywhere in the United States in the summertime is either hot or very hot. But luckily today, experiencing a beautiful day here in, well, I'm not experiencing it because I'm in my hotel room recording the show, but if I were outside, I'd be really enjoying it. So, thanks again for the voicemail feedback, Carl. And to answer your question, yes, I did fly the L-1011 TriStar, and I flew that back in, I think, between 96 and 99. 3 years total as a first officer, co-pilot. And that was a 3-pilot crew airplane, at least the way we fly it at Acme, or flew it. The captain's seat, the first officer seat, and then the flight engineer's position. Some airlines used professional flight engineers. In other words, they were not rated pilots, but they were professional flight engineers. And other airlines, I think most airlines did it as we do at Acme, where that's another pilot position, although you're not actually at the controls of the airplane, but you're monitoring the systems of the airplane, etc. My impression of the airplane, as I mentioned earlier, I flew the 727 for many years, a year and a half on the engineer seat in the 727. Then I moved up to the co-pilot seat, and I was there for 7 years. And when I finally got the bid for the L-1011 back in 1996, I was a little skeptical because I'd heard so many people say that the L-1011 TriStar was just like, it's the queen of the fleet. There's no airplane that's better out there as far as flying. And I was skeptical. And when I started flying it, I thought, well, it's not that bad, especially for a big, wide-body airplane. It's fast. That thing we'd cruise at 0.86 to 0.88 Mach, which is kind of unusual because, you look at it and it's kind of a big, fat, short, stubby airplane. You'd think that it wouldn't be that fast, but it was. It was the fastest airplane that we had at the time. It was a great hand-flying airplane. I had to finally admit, after about flying it for a month or so, that indeed the engineers at Lockheed had just done a brilliant job engineering that airplane. That airplane has so many engineering firsts and so many advances in flight controls and avionics and everything else that it was some people said it was not the state of the art, but the start of the art. A lot of the advanced systems on modern airplanes today had their genesis from the Lockheed TriStar. For instance, I'll just mention one thing that I like to talk about with pilots that I fly with who had never had the opportunity to fly the L-1011. One of which is the system that they had was called DLC, Direct Lift Control. And the way the system worked, if I remember correctly, when you were in the final landing configuration, in other words, the landing gear was down and your flaps were set to the landing position, what would happen is the spoiler panels on the wings would extend to about 6 degrees. I think that's what the number was. And that became the new neutral for the spoiler panels. And so what would happen is if you're on a glide slope coming down into the runway, a 3-degree glide slope, let's say, and you got a little bit high on the glide slope. So what do we do with a conventional control airplane? We push forward on the yoke. And what that would do with almost every other airplane flying out there, if you push forward on the yoke, what does that do? Well, it actuates the elevator in the back on the tail, which pushes the elevator up, which pushes the, what did I say? So I want to push the yoke forward, the control yoke. The elevator in the back would make the tail, now I'm getting all confused, would make the tail go up, which pushes the nose down, and I need more sleep. And that would cause the pitch to change. That's basically what I'm trying to say. You move the control yoke, the pitch changes. So you push it forward, the nose drops. You pull it back, the nose rises. And so you make your rate of descent change, and you get back down on the glide slope. Well, in the L1011, when you were in the landing configuration and the direct lift control system was working, instead of the pitch changing, what would happen is the spoiler panels would extend a little bit. So I push forward on the control yoke, the control panels extend. I'm sorry, the spoiler panels extend, and that makes your rate of descent increase. So you kind of drop like an elevator. So you're flying along, and your pitch really isn't changing. Maybe in a minuscule amount, but really not that noticeable. And then when you got close to where you should be on your glide slope, then you reset your control yoke, and then the spoilers would go back to their new neutral position of 6 degrees. Same thing as if you're below the glide slope. You pull back on the yoke. Most airplanes, the pitch would raise, or your pitch angle would go up, your nose would rise. And but on the L1011, the pitch angle stayed the same, and the spoilers would actually start fairing and causing more lift, and you'd go up like an elevator. So the weird thing about that was that the spoiler handle, which was a huge thing in the L1011 control, the central pedestal area, was a big giant thing that would move around, and when you were in direct lift control, that thing would actually be moving. So you push forward on the control yoke, and the peripheral vision, you see the spoiler handle moving aft. When you push forward on the yoke, the opposite would happen. It would actually move forward. So it was kind of odd. You kind of got into a pilot-induced oscillation, a PIO, when you were first getting checked out on the airplane, because your brain and your hands and the flight control system weren't really in sync. It took a little while to get used to that system. But once you did, man, what a beautiful system. And one more thing while I'm at it. When you landed on most airplanes, like the one I'm flying right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, I think most airplanes are like this. When you touch down and you have the auto spoiler systems activated, which I think most airplanes have now, most modern airliners, when the wheel starts spinning up, it touches down, all the spoiler panels come up. And if you're in a crosswind, landing in a crosswind on a typical airplane like the MD-88, if I touch my right main gear down on the runway, it senses that we're on the runway, all the spoiler panels come up, and your wing that's still flying, the upwind wing, kind of drops down pretty rapidly. And so you have to really use a lot of finesse to try to get a nice landing when you're using the auto spoiler system and you're in a crosswind. Well, the engineers at Lockheed thought, you know what, we're going to make a better system. And so what they did is they decided, okay, this big airplane's landing in a crosswind. So let's say it's a crosswind coming from right to left. You're approaching the runway. Your right wing is down, your left wing is up. The system worked such that when the main gear truck sensed wheel spin up and compression on the strut, it would be fed to a computer. The computer would say, oh, okay, the right main gear truck is on the runway. So let's go ahead and extend all of the ground spoilers and flight spoilers, in other words, the speed brakes, up on that wing, because that side of the airplane is on the runway. And so we don't need to be creating lift over there anymore. But on the other hand, hey, we're not getting a signal from the left main gear truck. We don't sense any wheel spin up. We don't sense any strut compression. So obviously this wing is still up in the air. It's still flying. So we're going to crack the spoilers a little bit, but not a lot. So we're sensing that the pilot is probably in the midst of lowering the wing to the runway to try to get a nice smooth landing. And then when it finally senses that the left main gear has wheel spin up and the strut is compressed, then all the spoiler panels on that wing extend. So it was a beautiful thing. The engineers, again, did a beautiful job on that airplane. I'm waxing emotionally here about this airplane. Beautiful airplane. Now, most passengers that I've talked to who have flown on that L-1011 have the same opinion that you have, Carl, about how nice of an airplane it was to fly. The only time I ever hear anything really negative about the airplane is from the flight attendants. That airplane, when it cruised at altitude, it was a very pitch high, a positive pitch airplane, because a lot of the fuselage was actually creating the lift. Whereas in most airplanes, the wings are creating the lift. That's what's keeping the airplane in the air. Well, on the L-1011, the wings are creating lift to keep the airplane flying, but also part of the fuselage as well. So you have a pretty high angle of attack. I'd say, I'm just remembering my time and experience in that airplane. It seems to me that at altitude, the pitch angle was about 6 degrees nose high. And for a typical airplane, for instance, the MD-88, a typical cruise altitude pitch angle is about 2.5 degrees. So much more, level kind of a picture. Now, the reason why I say the flight attendants either loved it or hated it is because this airplane is cruising at 6 degrees nose high, and so going from the back of the airplane to the front of the airplane is going uphill, and they are trying to push these beverage carts and meal carts uphill to each row. Same thing with the beverage carts. And then, of course, going the other way with it, they were kind of like having to ride the brakes on those things to keep the carts from rolling all the way back down to the tail. And so they got a physical workout, pushing and pulling those carts up and down the aisles of the L-1011. Some flight attendants loved the airplane. We had some models of the airplane had a lower galley. And so you actually went down like a little lift. I think we had two, one on either side near the aisles. And in the center section of the airplane, you would actually get in like a little elevator and go down to the lower galley. And so the center section of the airplane was actually a bunch of ovens. And I'm not sure how many ovens were down there, but that's where the term galley slaves, now I know that has nothing to do with airplanes, but a lot of people referred to that position as galley slave because they're down in the galley and they're slaving because it's very, very warm down there and a lot of work, but all they did was put trays, meals that had to be heated into the ovens, and then took meals that had already been heated out of the oven and back into the trays, and they'd send the carts full of the hot food up for the flight attendants on the normal level of the airplane. And a lot of flight attendants really liked working in that position because it meant that they could spend the whole flight down there and they wouldn't have to interact at all with passengers. Now, several flight attendants who enjoy interacting with passengers and don't like being in a hot environment and working very, very hard didn't want to be working in the lower galley, but to each their own. And so again, you ask a flight attendant who flew back then, who during the L-1011 era at Acme, and you usually get about a 50-50 response when it comes to, did you like that airplane? So anyway, thanks for bringing back the memories, Carl. Yes, a beautiful airplane. I miss it. And I regard that as one of the best airplanes I've ever flown in my life. Speaking of feedback, I received this from China. He sent this to feedback at airlinepilotguy.com. Hey, Captain Jeff, when was the last time you had to input any airport ICAO codes, ICAO, that started with a Z into the FMC? I believe the MD-80 series that you pilot won't take you so far as to the Far East nonstop, although the not-so-mysterious Acme Airlines do fly the Detroit to ZSPD, Z Sierra Papa Delta, or Zulu Sierra Papa Delta, which is Shanghai, Pudong. That is the principal international airport in Shanghai, China. Acme does fly that route, and 2 to 3 years back used to fly the Atlanta to Shanghai super long haul route with the 777-200. Anyways, I believe this marks the first feedback from the People's Republic of China. Question mark? Yes, it is, I think. Oh, by the way, let me stop. Many of the MD-90s that we were flying now at Acme were from China, so I would imagine that the ICAO identifiers put into the flight management computers included a Z many, many, many times. But I digress. Let's see. Joseph continues. I'm not a paid aviation professional, but a die-hard aviation enthusiast, and have 12 years of flying high-fidelity Boeing aircraft add-ons with Microsoft Flight Simulator, one of the main topics today. I think he's talking about my last show. I'm a Catholic dad and finance professional in real life, or spare time, depends on how you look at it. Hey, what does that mean? That means that you're a finance guy and you don't really work that much because you make so much money? Cool. Anyway, I was born and raised in Shanghai and spent a few years in the U.S. Midwest, Chicago more precisely, for work and school before coming back to Asia a few years ago. I'm a frequent flyer both internationally and within Asia. As you know, China's civil air travel demand is growing at like 30% per year, and there's a great demand gap for airline transport pilots here. Many American pilots get hired by Chinese airlines and get paid 2 times their wage back home. Maybe I should look into that. Anyways, I found your podcast on iTunes just last week, but have downloaded almost all of them. Great work you're doing in multiple dimensions: faith, aviation, life. So, my first 4 questions for you. Number 1, related to cross-border transoceanic flights. Although pilots and ATC controllers worldwide have certified proficiency in English theoretically, you inevitably run into the issue of accents. I would imagine in busy arrival and departure stages, a hiccup caused by linguistic misunderstanding could result in a bit of sweat and adrenaline. Have you personally or anyone you know run into such issues? Also, since places like China, Russia, and I believe Germany use meters to describe altitude and or flight levels, and transition altitudes are also different, again, I just wanted to know what the experiences of yourself or anyone you know have been. Okay, I'll answer that one first. Yes, although you're right, the international aviation language is English, sometimes accents can be very, very difficult to understand. And that goes whether you're going into Latin America, South America, flying in Korea, as I did, and Japan when I was in the Air Force. Flew a little bit over in Germany and some other countries over there in Europe when I was in the Air Force as well. And, you know, it's not too hard if you are kind of expecting what they're going to say. And then you can kind of understand what they're saying to you. But if they say something to you and send you to a fix you've never heard of, sometimes it can get pretty difficult. And I have not heard of anybody, you know, having a really bad experience with it, like, you know, risking lives and stuff like that. And anyone I know personally anyway, and I've not had that experience myself. But yes, you do have to really keep your ears open. And several times I remember looking over at the other pilot that I'm flying with and going, like, you know, with a frown, what was that? What did they say? And usually if you have a question, you ask them and they try to say it again, and that doesn't work, then they'll use the phonetic alphabet to spell out the fix that they want you to fly to. Okay, number 2. In one of the episodes, you talked about how, for addiction reasons, you wanted to stay away from flight simulators in general, and I fully understand that. For a semi-lay yet otherwise unable to fly / learn to fly in the real world, but hopelessly obsessed with the art and technology of aviation, I would argue that desktop flight sims are the way to go. Although Microsoft Flight Simulator, the latest version being simply Microsoft Flight, is moving toward more simplistic flight systems avionics and focus more on the environment, aerial, ground, etc., to cater to more entry-level flight simmers, its core program provided a good platform for high-fidelity third-party add-ons. For example, the core MSFS, and I believe the same for X-Plane. I guess that's the initials for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Yeah. Includes almost the entirety of the world's terrain, airports, runways, nav aids, jet and Victor Airways, airport frequencies, and all mainstream standard instrument departures and standard arrival procedures, and are all upgradable. In fact, there is an AirInc synced schedule update to these navigational data. Wow, I didn't know that. This whole world of simulator flying is just amazing to me. I need to find one of you guys and look over your shoulder while you're doing this. It looks pretty interesting. Okay, the second thing he says, the default aircraft that came with Microsoft Flight Simulator are at best toys, but the professional third-party add-ons would at least impress any real-life pilot. The entire avionics, FMC, flight control, autopilot, electrical, pneumatics, hydraulics, and fuel systems are often simulated in today's add-ons that cost more than $40 per airplane. In most of today's third-party add-on airliners, 90% of the FMC's functionality is simulated, including the usual stuff, as well as worldwide airport nav data, SID star holdings, offsets. Some can even accurately simulate cost index setting. Wow, that's amazing. Okay, next question. High altitude winds aloft. In a February family trip to Hawaii, we experienced the strongest headwind on the way back from Honolulu to Shanghai. The passenger screen moving map was showing 200 miles per hour. That would mean like 180 knots, correct? So the Honolulu to Shanghai flight time was nearly twice that of Shanghai to Honolulu. What's the strongest headwind or tailwind or crosswind have you experienced in real life? How do you pilots cope with heavy tailwind when it's so high that the higher stall speed overshadows the joy of a nice push in the rear end? And we can all enjoy a nice push in the rear end, can't we? No, I'm just kidding. He didn't write that. I did. I said that. Okay, headwinds, high winds aloft, especially over the Pacific Ocean. Did a lot of flying when I was in the military from Tokyo, Japan, back over either to the west coast of the United States or to Anchorage, Alaska. And the jet stream core over the Pacific Ocean in the wintertime can indeed get very, very high winds. And the passenger screen movie map showing 200 miles per hour, not unusual at all. In fact, I think I've even seen it higher than that. I mean, close to 200 knots, which is about 230 miles per hour, which is great when you're flying with it. When you're flying against it, it just makes for a very, very long flight. In fact, so much so that you would actually fly at a much lower altitude to try to get out of that jet stream core or even alter your routing to keep from having to fly in those strong winds. Now, as far as the, okay, let's see the question. What's the strongest headwind or tailwind? Again, probably that instance of flying from Yokota Air Base outside of Tokyo back to Travis Air Force Base in Northern California. I believe we saw something close to 200 knots. He writes, how do pilots cope with the heavy tailwind when it's so high that the higher stall speed overshadows the joy of a nice push in the rear end? Well, okay, that's a common misconception. You have to understand that air mass that you're flying through is only really in reference to the ground. So if you're sitting on the ground and you see this column of air flying over the top of you at 200 miles per hour, you can't see it, but if you could, that's one thing. But the airplane doesn't know how fast it's going over the ground, or the wings don't. I mean, the airplane does because it has an inertial navigation system in it, a global positioning satellite system in it, something to indicate how fast it's moving across the globe. But the wings, they could care less. The wings only care about one thing. They care about the air that's flying or flowing over them. So the airspeed is going to be the same, whether your air mass that you're traveling is traveling at 200 miles per hour, whether it is zero winds, calm winds. It doesn't matter. So the stall speed does not go higher when you're in a tailwind or when you're in a headwind. So that's one of those common misconceptions. Just like, let's say, a river, and you're in a boat in the river. You have a gauge on your boat that's showing you the speed. Let's say you're traveling at 10 knots in your big trawler on the river, and you're going upriver or upstream and let's say the current is 5 knots. Well, you're going 10, or the boat thinks it's going 10, and the river is flowing, the current is flowing 5 the other direction, so the result is you're only moving upriver at 5 knots. Now, turn around, you're going back the other way, you're going with the current of the river. The boat indicator, the boat speed indicator is showing 10 knots. The river is actually flowing at 5 knots, so you get to add that to your speed. So the rate at which you're actually going down the river, as far as how it pertains to the globe or the ground, is at 15, much faster. So I hope that made some sense. That's the same kind of thing. The air currents are just like the currents in a river. Okay, my last question today regarding the type of aircraft you can actually, My last question today regarding the type of aircraft you open actually came from an MSFS add-on called Fly the Mad Dog. Take a look at the pictures, or the features it simulates, will ya? Okay, he has a link here to www.flythemaddog.com. I need to, I meant to look at that before I did this podcast, and I didn't get a chance to, so I'll have to look at it after I record this. And he said, I realize every time during the takeoff roll, if I manually advance the thrust to full, rather than using the auto thrust takeoff setting, one of the engines quickly overheats and shuts down with fumes coming out when the true airspeed is close to 100 knots, usually before reaching V-rotate. I have not experienced this in other aircraft in the simulator, so just wondering whether this is also the case for real-life MD-80s. Good training for aborted takeoff and emergency landing with one engine, though. No, it doesn't. Well, I don't know what you mean by saying you advance the thrust to full. If you mean taking the throttles and actually putting them against the firewall, like as far forward as they'll go, that would be a no-no. You'd be exceeding all kinds of engine parameters. The RPM of both compressor sections. I'm sure the EGT would quickly overheat, and that's probably why your simulator thing is catching on fire, basically. Well, of course it's already on fire, but it's overheating and shutting down with fumes coming out. If you use the calculated thrust takeoff setting, that's basically the most thrust you're going to get out of that airplane without damaging the engines and everything staying in normal parameters. Typically what we'll do is use reduced thrust settings on this airplane, or flex settings, to simulate conditions that are actually warmer, which means that we're actually using less power than the normal rated takeoff thrust when we take off, but it's because we don't need all that power, and it saves wear and tear on the engines. It means the engines last longer, and engines are expensive, so that's why we try to use the flex power or reduced power settings as much as possible. Sometimes, though, you got to use the normal rated thrust setting, and again, that's going to change as the conditions change, the temperature outside, etc. But we never, ever, ever push the throttles all the way to as far as they go forward, unless you're in a situation where you think that ground contact is imminent and you're about to crash. That would be the only time you would do that. So that's my experience with the airplane. I've never had an overheat, and hopefully now, knock on wood, I will not have an overheat tomorrow, now that I've said that. Okay, Joe says, over, out for now. God bless. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Again, I have listeners all over the world. I have somebody who contacts me quite often from Thailand, Thai Airways, I believe. Australia, let's see, we have Africa, we have Papua Indonesia, Portugal, Spain, I think Germany, England, let's see, where else? Brazil, I think we had some feedback from somebody in Brazil. So basically, pretty much all over the globe. But you're the first from China, Joe. So thanks for sending me in the feedback. Appreciate that. Okay, speaking of feedback, one of the places where I hang out and read tweets, and you can sometimes see some stuff from me. Sometimes I'll snap a photo from the cockpit and show you the view outside my office window, is Twitter. And I have a couple different accounts, Twitter accounts. The main one that I use is Jeff Nielsen. That's my name, Jeffnielsen. Also, Airline Pilot Guy, the one that I use to tweet about things that have specifically to do with aviation and the airlines. And so I was looking at it the other day, and apparently I hadn't seen it in a while. And several of you sent me tweets with some really interesting stuff in it. And let's start out with this one. AC pilot Michael Krupka flies for Air Canada, and he is in Caledon, Ontario. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, Michael. But let's see, what did he write to me? AC pilot. Oh, yes. Robert Zemeckis directed a movie, or is directing a movie. I think it's going to be released in November, and it's entitled Flight. And he said it's a must-watch. So he gave me a link to Geek Tyrant, and they have the trailer there for Flight. And let me click on this tab here. This from, again, Geek Tyrant. And I'm sure you can find the trailer for Flight elsewhere. And this is what the Geek Tyrant writes. Here's the trailer to Robert Zemeckis' new film, Flight. This is the director's first live-action film since Castaway, which he made over 12 years ago. He kind of got lost in that whole motion capture technology for a while. The movie stars Denzel Washington as an airline pilot who lands a plane that is about to crash. He manages to land the plane with minimal casualties and is seen as a hero. Things take a turn for the worse. When an investigation into the cause of the crash unfolds, it becomes clear that he was flying under the influence of drugs and alcohol. Okay, so let me play a little bit of that movie trailer. Fair use, I'm assuming here.
Good morning, Trina.
Good morning, Captain Whitaker.
Here's your manifest with 102 souls on board.
Let's get them tucked in. We're ready to push. How you feeling, Whip? Looked like you pulled some kind of move up there, man. You saved a lot of lives.
We are in a dive.
I have no control on my side.
We going down?
Everybody in brace positions.
The way you landed that plane was nothing short of a miracle.
I see nothing but houses.
Evan, listen to me. Trim us nose down.
The plane fell apart at 30,000 feet.
We're gonna roll it.
What do you mean roll it?
Ready? Here we go.
I'm on the list, baby girl. There is all kinds of crazy news people out here. You're a rock star, man. You will never pay for another drink as long as you live.
Captain Whitaker is a real American hero.
This is Hugh Lang. He's an attorney from Chicago. Why do we need a lawyer?
You don't remember having your blood drawn the night of the crash? You had alcohol in your system. That could be life in prison.
The NTSB hearings in 10 days.
Captain Whitaker!
They're under the microscope right now.
Are you hiding something?
You gonna shoot me? Can I come inside?
Yeah, come on inside. I'll shoot you inside.
This was an act of God.
Whose God would do this?
Our investigators concluded the aircraft failed.
The FAA placed 10 pilots in simulators, recreated the events. Every pilot killed everybody on board. You were the only one who could do it.
You saved my mom.
I want to talk about the days leading up to the accident.
This thing is so heavy it's killed me. I drank the night before the flight.
Does Whitaker know?
Okay, you get the picture here. I'll have a link to the Flight, the movie Flight, the trailer that is, in the show notes, and you can take a look at it yourself. Maybe you've already seen it. Okay, interesting, yeah, and of course I've only seen little excerpts of the movie in this trailer, so I'm not sure what the context is of a lot of this stuff. But I can tell you right now that you know, like the scene of him. Oh, by the way, one of the cool things is, guess what? It's the inside of an MD-80 series airplane. So if you ever wondered what it looks like when I'm flying an airplane, that's see this movie or the trailer, see Denzel Washington in my seat, and that's what my office chair looks like. And the airplane shown in many shots is some type of a McDonnell Douglas 80 series airplane. Although it does have nice fancy winglets on it, which is pretty cool. But you know, like the scene where he's like holding onto the yoke and he said, "We're in a dive." Now, of course, I don't know if he's telling his co-pilot that, which would be patently obvious to him, I would think, or if he is communicating with somebody on the ground. Maybe that's why he's yelling, "We're in a dive." Telling his co-pilot to trim the nose down. Well, why not? Your hands are on the yoke. Why don't you trim the nose down? It's like the button's right where your thumb is, your right thumb. So again, not fair. I may be taking a lot of this out of context. Apparently, if you're watching the trailer, you'll see at the very end that he's coming close to the ground and the airplane is inverted. Yes, the airplane is inverted, and he somehow successfully lands in a field, and most everybody lives through it. So, yeah, okay, far-fetched, yeah, but maybe the point of this movie is not so much the fact that the details of how he could actually land an airplane like that, you know, whether that's real or not. I guess the big thing that they're examining here is this guy went out and he saved the lives. He's a hero. But because he had a little bit of alcohol and drugs in his system, well, now they're going to crucify him. So that should be the interesting aspect of this movie, I would imagine. So thank you, Michael, for sending me the tweet with that link. And I look forward to going to the movie theaters and watching it and seeing for myself how it is. So keep on listening and keep on flying safely out there. Speaking of flying safely, legendary pilot, let's see if I can find his real name. Legendary, oh, Kobe, I didn't know that was you. Kobe sent me some email feedback. I think I read it on the last show or the one before that. Anyway, he is into flight simming up there in Alaska. I believe he's 12 years old or maybe 14. I don't remember. He's either a teenager or almost a teenager. And again, he's up in the Fairbanks area, actually. And he sent me this. He said, "Dear Captain Jeff, just a sky thought. The general public doesn't seem to be aware that first officers fly too. Take care and God bless." Yeah, you know what? That is true, Kobe, that we don't let first officers, FOs, fly the airplane. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, the way it works is that we usually alternate legs, or in this case, when you're flying the MD-88 for Acme Airlines and you're flying a 3-day trip and you're basically going in and out like the one I'm on right now. We started in Atlanta, we went out to, where did we go the first day? St. Louis, then back to Atlanta, and then to Oklahoma City. Today we went Oklahoma City to Atlanta, Atlanta to Buffalo. Tomorrow, guess what? Guess where we're going to go? Back to Atlanta, you're right. And then we do a turn somewhere, I think Chicago. O'Hare International and back. And so, you know, we basically split the number of legs amongst ourselves. So that is 3, 2, 3. So that's 8 flights or 8 legs in this particular trip. So I'm going to fly 4 of them, and my first officer, Craig, is going to fly 4 of them. And in the old days, it used to be where, you know, the captain would always start. That's kind of customary. And then the co-pilot flies his or her leg next, their flight, back to Atlanta. And then the captain flies to somewhere. And then the co-pilot flies back to Atlanta. And you can see after a while, all you're doing as a co-pilot is flying to Atlanta. So what I like to do, and a lot of guys do, is fly these things in pairs. So for instance, yesterday, our first day, I flew from Atlanta to St. Louis, and then I flew back from St. Louis to Atlanta. So I did that out and back. Craig, he flew the 3rd leg to Oklahoma City, and then the 1st leg this morning back from Oklahoma City to Atlanta. So he did an outback, between Atlanta and Oklahoma City. I just flew up here to Buffalo. Tomorrow morning I'll fly back to Atlanta, and then Craig will have the last 2 legs to Chicago O'Hare and back. And so when one pilot is flying, the other pilot is doing the non-flying pilot or pilot monitoring duties, reading the checklists, making sure that all the checklist items are done, talking on the radio, making public addresses, although I do like to do PAs, as you can most likely tell, because I like to talk on the internet radio. So if I sense that I'm flying with a guy that doesn't like to do PAs, I offer to do all of them because I really like it. But anyway, so that's what happened. So yes, I mean, how in the world do you think that first officers / co-pilots get experience flying? Well, they actually fly. Good question, Kobe. You knew the answer, but a lot of people, you're right, doesn't seem to know that. And I think that's probably because, we see the movies and television programs, and they're all, the writers for these things are under the misconception that the co-pilot, all they do is talk on the radio and sit on their hands and don't touch the controls. But that's not true. So thanks for sending me that tweet. And, this is cool. Mariana's iPod sent me this. And it is a link to this place in, I think it's in Germany. And I'll put this link in the show notes. And you have to watch this. This is on YouTube. And you've seen the model railroaders and how they have those huge elaborate setups, some of them, where the trains are going, through tunnels and on bridges and all kinds of things are happening. Well, you're not going to believe this. You have to look at this link. I don't know where this is exactly, but again, I think somewhere in Germany. And it's a huge space. I don't know. It must be 30 feet by 30 feet or more, 10 meters by 10 meters or more. I don't know. And it's actually an airport. And you can see these scale models of a Super A380 Airbus, 777s, Airbus 330s, 737s, etc. And they're taxiing out. They're getting pushed back from the gate. All these little vehicles, support vehicles, are all over the place. Sometimes it looks a little jerky and stuff. I'm not sure exactly how they're doing this, if they're connected directly to something underneath or they're using magnets or something. But the thing that just absolutely blew me away, and you have to keep watching this thing, I don't know how long it goes, but in the background, I'm watching this Airbus A380 taxiing out, and in the background I see this runway, and there's a jet taking off. I mean, the thing actually lifts off from the runway. Again, I don't know how this works, and it kind of flies into this flap. Oops, looks like clouds or something, and disappears. Goes off into the clouds and flying. Amazing. You have to watch this thing. It's amazing. So thank you, Mariana's iPod, for sending that to me. And again, I'll try to remember to have that in the show notes. Check it out. Okay, let's see. And good friend and fellow pilot at Acme, Scott Jones, was promoting my Airline Pilot Guy podcast, number 31. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. And let's see. I made a tweet the other day going into Oklahoma City. It was the first game of the NBA Finals. I don't follow professional basketball at all, and I had no idea that there was the big game in Oklahoma City last night, and we were staying like right downtown, like right next door to where the game was going on. And I tweeted that just arrived in Oklahoma City. Seems there's some sort of big game here tonight. National Bowling Association, I think, NBA. So of course, that was trying to be cute. And then Super Dave MC tweeted back to me, that would give a whole new importance to the open slowly, items may have shifted overhead bin announcement. Yeah, if you had your bowling balls up there. So thank you, Super Dave MC, for making me chuckle. And again, Scott Jones, Mike Rogers, Michael Kruger, Kobe, Mariana's iPod, and everybody else who sometimes tweets to Airline Pilot Guy on Twitter. So that's yet another way that you can send feedback to me and point out things that you think might be kind of cool to talk about on the show. Okay, well, let me go back to my notes and make sure that I've covered everything. Again, another long show. I guess that's just going to be the normal for the Airline Pilot Guy show. I was hoping that since I just did one last week, I wouldn't have to go that long to cover these things. But heck, you guys are providing so much feedback for me, and I do appreciate that. And of course I talk too much, I guess. But anyway, I think I covered it all, and so let me go to my closing script here. You too can send feedback. Feedback at airlinepilotguy.com. Area code 304-99-PILOT is my voice feedback line. That's area code 304-997-4568. Or go to the site, Airline Pilot Guy. Click on that little tab over there on the right and do as Carl did and others have done in the past and send me some voice feedback. We love hearing your voice. And I just mentioned my site, Airline Pilot Guy. I'm on Twitter, Jeff Nielsen and Airline Pilot Guy. And on Facebook, Captain Jeff. That's facebook.com, Captain, C-A-P-T, .J-E-F-F. And also, I forget to mention this often, I'm on Stitcher Radio, Stitcher Smart Radio. You can now hear Airline Pilot Guy while on the go with Stitcher Smart Radio. On-demand news, talk, and more on your mobile phone. My latest episode is always available for you. No syncing needed and no memory or storage wasted. Available on your iPhone, iPad, Android phones, and beyond. Downloading is easy. Go to Stitcher.com or check out your app store. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to radio. A little bit more about Stitcher if you're not familiar. It's just an app that you can listen to this stuff. They take my podcast and compress it a little bit more, so they shrink it in size, which is very important for those of us who have data plans and we're always getting close to the limit or exceeding it. And you can listen to the show without downloading the full quality audio by going to Stitcher and getting a little lower quality, but hey, it's not taking up so much of your bandwidth. And it's, again, as I said, on-demand news, talk, and more for your mobile phone. It brings radio and podcast listeners a better way to listen to their favorite shows. It helps them discover new content. They'll be delivering personalized audio streams on demand right on your smartphone. It's also in some cars as well. That's why I was really interested to get my show on Stitcher, because many GM and Ford cars now have onboard dashboard systems that play Stitcher Radio, so you can listen to Airline Pilot Guy while you're driving around in your Ford Mustang. It's also available on the Sonos systems, and over 5,000 shows are on Stitcher. So, check it out, StitcherRadio.com. The smarter way to listen to radio. Okay, until we meet again, remember, it's always better to be down here wishing you were up there than up there wishing you were down here. As always, wishing you unlimited visibility, tailwinds, and blue skies. Take care, and God bless. And let's see if we actually got a recording on video. It says it's still recording. Okay, this is actually part 2, because somewhere toward the beginning I looked down and my Ustream was giving me a warning that it had stopped because it just lost all bandwidth. So I hit the record button again quickly, and that's what you're watching now. So thanks for hanging in there with me, and if you like what you see here on YouTube, do something about it. Put in a comment about it, a link, a tweet, a Facebook message. Say, hey, check out this dude in his grungy t-shirt in his hotel room talking about airline stuff. So until next time, take care and God bless.